Bethany Autumn, and this is the Bear All podcast, where we will be bearing all. We will be talking about sexual well being, we will be talking about mental health, overcoming traumas, and the main thing, trying to love yourself and finding the things in life that make you the happiest. So, a little bit about my self journey and sort of what I have gone through is what I'm going to be sharing with you guys today to hopefully help inspire and help you guys to reflect on your own lives. And maybe you've gone through something similar. Maybe you've gone through something completely different, but just having somebody that you can listen to and hear and being able to be like, wow, okay, somebody was able to overcome these crazy wild things. Maybe I can also overcome a crazy wild thing or something that really traumatized you, whether it was a relationship, growing up with your family, maybe it was your parents, a grandparent, maybe it was somebody at church who made you feel like you were a lot less than yourselves. So, a little bit about myself. Um, Here, hold on, I'm going to pull up some notes because this has been a long time coming. And we do have Gizmo here today. So apologies if he starts yelling. He is very opinionated and he really loves to be part of this. So, all right. So pretty much just like, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Bethany Autumn. I have lived in Albany for going on 2 years now. And I ended up moving to Albany and sort of after had bounced around the capital region for quite a while. And I actually ended up here, and it was my first apartment alone. I had never lived alone. I have always lived with other people. You know, I grew up in a family of like there were five of us, five kids. Plus, we had foster kids. We had random children that would come over all the time, and then my step siblings. So I have always been surrounded by people. And I moved away at a young age and lived with my now ex-husband, and that's a story that eventually we will get to. But I lived, you know, I went from living with my family to living with him to then when I left him, I kind of bounced around and lived with other people because I didn't have the money to live on my own. So moving here to Albany was really my big first step to be like, wow, I can finally go out and be independent. Now, mind you, I'm 29, so that didn't happen until I was about 27. And it's not easy to get to a place where you can go live on your own financially. It's kind of put me in a little bit of a hole. It's been really expensive to live on my own. That's just how it is currently in this day and age. Like, you know, trying to find an apartment that's safe to live in, that's within an area that you can commute to work and everything. It's not cheap. So that's been something that's really been like a little bit of a, not necessarily a learning curve, but in some ways, yes, where I had to like reteach myself all over, like, oh, I need to learn how to budget. I need to do all these things. Those are not things that you know as a kid. Those are not things that we are necessarily taught in school. We're taught some, but also, mind you, I dropped out of high school in 10th grade. So it's just like for me, there were a lot of things that were a learning curve. So overall, it's just been really, really interesting to find my independence and find out who Bethany is, regardless of a man that I'm living with, my family, or other roommates, or anybody else having an impact on me other than just myself. And it's been really, really eye-opening and very difficult, mostly financially difficult. And also emotionally because, you know, I've been very codependent in my life, so it's been really hard to sometimes be alone. And that's actually why Gizmo came to live with me a year ago. You know, I had lived here for a year by myself, and I just got to a point where I was like, I am so lonely. Like you know, random hookup culture, all these different things wasn't cutting it. I tried to have some relationships, they weren't cutting it. And I was like, I hate coming home and being alone. And I know that some people really, really love it. And there's a part of me that does love being alone. But there's also a part of me that's like, I was like, I need another breathing creature in my apartment. I have never been alone in my 27 years of life. I have never lived alone. And so it started to really get to me, and that's when I reached out, and Gizmo came to me because he was with my mom, and then he was my sister's prior to that, so he's kind of been in the family for like 7 or 8 years. So he was the perfect little fit, and he was kind of something that really helped stabilize my mental health a little bit. Like, I make jokes about it all the time, but I'm like, if it wasn't for that cat, I would have killed myself. And I'm not lying, because there were times where I was just so lonely and so depressed, where I was like, "Uh, I need somebody. Like, I need a being, I need a creature, I need, and it doesn't need to be a man, it doesn't need to be a woman, it doesn't need to be somebody that I'm sexually active with. I just need somebody that I can come home and they want to see me. Like, Gizmo is so excited to see me when I get home that he's just like up in my face, and I love it, and I absolutely need that. So, and I know so many other girls who live alone have cats or a dog. Like, they have a cat or a dog. That's just what the girlies do when we are living alone. We have some kind of animal. And if you live completely on your own without an animal, like, bless you. That's oh, Gizmo's bashing his head over here. um that's like, good for you. Honestly, sometimes people can really survive well on their own. But either way, so that's kind of like how I came to Albany, and sort of like sort of my journey of like starting to live on my own. And obviously, there's so much more that eventually I'm going to get into on this podcast. We're going to touch base on so many different parts of my life. And I really think that the biggest thing for me is why I originally started this podcast. So I had done another podcast prior to this one, and I just felt like I wasn't really hitting the personal notes that I really, really wanted to touch base on, because I have had such an interesting journey in self growth, and I think that so many people do. But I think that a lot of people aren't comfortable to talk about it. And guess what? Everybody is allowed to, like, if you don't want your life out there, don't put it out there, because the second it's out there, people are going to have opinions about it. But the reason that I want to put some of my stories out there is because I truly feel that it's going to reach somebody. Somebody's going to hear my stories and going to be like, you know what? I can relate to that. And thank you so much for I want to create a safe space. I want to be able to create just a, just a little bit of hope for people who are really, really going through it, and need to know that there's other people out there who have also struggled, and that you can make it by, and that you can not only just make it by, but that you can continue to strive and go out there and create and do the things that you love. Like, I love content creation. Do I get picked on it for doing it sometimes? Of course. People think I'm like a little weird or childish. Oh, you're almost 30. Why are you out there making videos and doing this? Well, because guess what? I love doing it, and it's what I do on top of my day job. And hopefully one day the things that I do can also help fund me to a point where I don't have to work that day job as much, or I can rely on other sources of income based on the things that I create and I love. And I think that so many times people are so put down by the fact that, like, oh, we need to do this and we need to do that to be successful. I I think that you need to, like, do whatever makes you feel best that's going to get you to success. And I think it's so hard. I've been on this sort of path of like creating for about we're going on almost a decade now. I started off doing photography, and then that led me to start modeling, and then modeling started me to getting into art modeling. After my divorce, and once I had freedoms to create a little bit more, I got into art modeling, and then art modeling got me into starting my OnlyFans, and then doing all that stuff has reached. I've reached out to different creators and doing different content collaborations with brands when it comes to the stuff that I do on my Instagram account. So it's like every single thing that I have done over the last decade has led me to be able to get to the point now where I finally feel comfortable enough to sit in front of a camera and talk and tell you guys my stories. So it's not just like every little thing that you do, if you keep doing it and you keep trying new things, eventually you're going to find your niche. And there's been so many. I love to do so many different things. I know so many creatives who are like, they're good at singing, they're good at a musical instrument, They're good at painting, drawing. They like all different types of creativity, art, maybe they're athletic. That like so many different people who have a creative mind are always told, "Oh, you're good at so many things." Well, yes, I'm good at so many things because I love them and I've focused on doing them and becoming good at them because if not, I'm going to get bored. I'm the kind of person where it's like I constantly need to keep doing something different or I will get bored. And I think that that's kind of why, I've done podcasts before over the years. Like I've done a couple of podcasts over the last couple years with some friends. Then I started my own, the Two Girls, One Cat with my best friend Claire. And it's really like I started to realize I was like, well, podcasting is really a great form and a great platform for what I want to do because I do so many different things that I just have all these different stories and it's a way to kind of funnel them all into one thing. Also like writing a book, which is where I was trying to go with this is I wanted to start podcasting because I'm trying to write a memoir, or I shouldn't say trying, I am writing a memoir. I started it 2 years ago. Actually back in 2022, I started writing my memoir right at the beginning. And I had wrote like the first two chapters and I got to the third and I just really hit a wall. And I reached out to one of my English professors from the community college that I got my associates at. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, like, I'm trying to write this memoir. I'm not an English major. I really don't know much. Like, I'm not, like, I feel like I'm a good writer, but I know that grammatically, I know I'm messing things up. Sometimes I get things messed up with like the past tense and present tense. And like when I'm writing, it's very fluid. It's very like what comes to my mind. And I know that in order for a book to eventually get published one day, I really need for it to make sense. And it can't just be like scatterbrained, crazy chaoticness. So I sent it off to her and had her give me some opinions on just the first chapter. And she responded back to me and was just immediately like shocked because she had no idea that like any of this was going on when I was her student. Cause like, when I was a college student there, it was right before I got married. And then during my, my break in the middle of my 2 year degree, this is when I got married and I came back and I took another one of her classes. So like I came back married and I was all so excited and happy to be married, showing off my ring and everything. So for then all these years later, for me to send her the first chapter of my book, and it was about the day I left my husband, mind you, that's now 2019. I was a student, so like 2016. So like 3 or 4 years later, I'm sending her the first draft of this first chapter of my memoir, and it's the day that I left my husband. That's what the first chapter is about. It's like that. And she was just really, really shocked. And it was something where I was like, wow, you know what? Sometimes we deal with so many things that are going on in our own life and we get in our own head about it that when we interact with other people, sometimes I think that we get frustrated that they're not being like conscious of the traumas that we've been through, but then we're like, they don't know them, like there's been so many times where I've talked to people about such a topic or this or that, and they'll say something and I'm like, whoa, 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 that's a little like maybe it's insensitive or maybe you're not being like, sometimes you just want people to know what's going on in your head, but they don't unless you tell them. And I think that that's something that's so important and recently has helped me with a lot of friendships and people that I know have been very difficult in communicating their issues is if you stop sometimes and just be like, hey, like, I'd really like to know a little bit more about you and why are you behaving this way or what is causing you to behave or do this thing. And I think that that's something that like looking back on the person that I was when I was in college to the person that I am now, but then also the person that I was when I left my husband, those are three completely different people. Like I'm still me, but I'm so different, like I was so lost, so confused, so isolated, so groomed into being this particular person that not I wanted to be, but what my ex-husband wanted me to be. That when I finally left him, I just got really angry. Like I was so angry. And then months and months later, I started to realize, oh yeah, I'm fucking pissed. I'm not just angry, I'm beyond pissed off that this person is still out there in the world and the workforce and doing their things with all the traumas and everything that they caused me. It hurt so much. And then it became made me really like wild, crazy, resentful. I started not really caring about other people's feelings to a certain degree. I started becoming very selfish. And we see a lot of these things about like how people are like, oh, I'm in my selfish era. I'm just doing things for me. Guess what? That is totally valid. I think that you should be aware of the people who love and care about you and who are truly there as your friend, and maybe not try to be so selfish to those people, but to make sure that your selfishness, and this is something that I wasn't really aware of at the time, but now looking back, I'm like, you know what? I was selfish in the best way possible for myself, but it also caused issues when it came to friendships and other relationships that could have potentially been like a partner or somebody, because I wasn't looking for that. And I think that that's valid and that's okay. But I think that there were a lot of times where I was always putting myself first and what felt good. I started to almost become really, really greedy for these highs in life. I was like, oh, this feels really, really good. I'm going to do it. And I don't give a fuck about what anybody else cares or thinks or does. Mind you, my older teen and young adult 20s were stolen from me. I didn't get to have that normal young 20s experience, going out to college parties, going to bars. And I get that like not everybody does that, but when you have the kind of personality that I do, that's who I am. I love to go out and party. That's just who I am. I love partying. I love being social. I get that that's not everybody's cup of tea, but if that's who you are and that's stolen from you, you're allowed to go a little wild. You're when you leave that situation, go wild. Have your titties out. Go, sleep with that really hot guy because that's what you want to do. Have a threesome if that's what you want to do. Get a little wild and go on adventures that seem a bit risky, as long as you're making sure that your like well-being is actually safe and you're not putting yourself in really, really dangerous situations. As long as everything that you're doing is consensual to you and the other people around you, um, go out and be wild. You're allowed to do that. We live in a day and age where we are allowed to do these sort of shameless acts that if we did them when our parents were our age, like that age, or their grandparents, we would have been shamed. We would have been told that we were horrible people, all these different things. But we live in a very different day and age now. And I really truly believe that like if you are somebody that has gone through this insane trauma in your life and you feel like you just need to go a little fucking wild, go wild. Go and have the time of your life and do whatever you need to do to heal yourself. There's always like that phrase, that quote from Meredith Grey in Grey's Anatomy when she's like talking to Derek, and she's like, don't be mad at me for the way that like I healed myself. I don't know exactly the quote. Maybe I can find it and like put it right here or something. But it was like, you don't get to be angry at me for the way that I decided to put myself back together or heal me. And like, yeah, I'm sure that my ex-husband and his family, if they've seen any of the things that I do now, or if they were stalking me to try to see the things that I'm doing in life, which I don't know. I don't talk to any of them anymore. I don't even know them as people anymore. People change so much. I don't know them anymore. But like if they were to see me, I 100% know that they would shame me because I know the way that they treated me when I was in that marriage. And everything, every single thing that I did, oh, you can't wear this, it's too slutty. You can't look like that. You can't do this. All of these things where I had to like fit this cookie cutter life that I was really like breaking away pieces of myself to fit into this box. And that's not who I am. That's not who I will ever be. I will never allow myself to ever get back into a relationship, let alone a full-blown marriage. If I ever get married again, we will see where the universe takes me. But I will never allow myself, even in friendships or friend groups, or even when it comes to business and certain things, I will never allow myself to become small enough to fit into other people's boxes. And no one ever should. You should never, ever change yourself to fit into the version of somebody or something that somebody else wants you to be. And I think that that's like something that I did for so long that I truly started to believe that that's all that I could be. And I really started to lose out on like the open mindedness of like, oh, this dream, this idea, this thing or whatever. Like, I always, like, I loved singing. Like, from the time that I could stand, I was singing. I was singing at church. My mom always tells this memory of me being, she's like, yeah, like I'm so young, I don't have the memory. But she's like, yeah, you literally got up out of the pew, you stood in the middle aisle, and you looked at the choir and you started belting out the words to the song that they were singing. And she was like, and you blew all of us away. I have no memory of this. But the fact is that I loved something from such a young age that I don't really remember doing it. And it was singing and getting my voice out there. And then into my teenage years, I would always like audition for like anything that was singing, talent shows, the Schoharie County Fair American Idol contests, the High Honor Rock and Roll Band that happened at my school. I would audition for everything and take part of it. And I would sing my heart out. And even the people that would treat me like crap at school, when I was done, they would come up and be like, wow, that was awesome. You did a great job. I mean, yeah, the next day would they go back into bullying me and teasing me? Totally. But like in that moment, they were kind of nice to me. So it always felt good. I always felt like I was like, well, I'm doing what I love. And, forget everybody else. I was never like worried about what everybody else in the room thought about it. It was about how I thought of myself. And I truly think that like as a young teenager, like preteens, like, man, I truly had some balls. I wanted to be Miley Cyrus. Like I wanted to be Hannah Montana. Like that's when all that stuff was going on and I would watch it and I was like, I want that. I want to be a star. And so I just like kept diving into that thing that I loved. And then it was all suddenly stolen away from me. When I was 17, I dropped out of high school and that's when I started the relationship with my then to be ex-husband. And all of that kind of was just ripped away from me. All that hope and joy of trying to be something that I wanted to. I was told like, oh no, you can't do that. I mean, you're great, but you can't do that. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't, I would have, had this lady who always encouraged me, as I got older and everything, and I started doing more modeling and stuff. Like my modeling at the time was very, very like simple, nothing too risky, definitely nothing on the sexual side. It was all just very like pretty stuff, like dresses, whatever. And I remember her just being like, you have a great figure. You should really get into art modeling. You'd be a great nude model. And then my husband at the time just got so angry and he was like, absolutely not. So that kind of just like that dream got cut off. Like one other dream got cut off, another dream got cut off. And I was constantly like realizing, I was like, wow, I'm literally just letting somebody else make decisions for me. And all of these things that I'm talking about, I will dive deeper into these at some point. But I really feel like the point that I'm trying to get across with all of this that I'm saying is that you need to not let people make decisions for you. You need to do what you want to do. If that's really what you want to do, go out there and do it. Because, the second that you start letting other people set limits on your life is when you're going to realize that you're losing out on things that you've always wanted to do. Or maybe they're things that you didn't know that you wanted to do and you just saw something and you're like, wow, I want to have that experience now. And like, I really wanted to go skydiving and he would never let me go skydiving. So then it was just like a few years later after that marriage ended and everything, I was like, fuck it, I'm going skydiving. And I did. And it was amazing. And it was exactly what I wanted it to be. And it was just like, I feel like for those of you who have been skydiving or have done something very similar where you're getting this super high adrenaline rush, I feel like it's like a similar feeling to when you have to like make that jump to like leave that relationship or try that new thing or quit that job to apply for something else, or I'm just going to buy the ticket and I'm going to go and I'm going to see what happens. And I think that it's like, it's that rush in that moment when you're like, oh my God, I'm falling. I don't know if I'm going to be okay. This is terrifying. And then the parachute opens up and you're like, okay, we're gliding. I'm kind of starting to get the hang of this now. I can figure this out. This isn't easy. Am I still a little scared because I'm like 8,000 feet up in the air? Hell yeah. So it's just it's been a really 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 interesting journey to figure out how to find that young crazy version of me who just had the balls and the guts to get up on stage and sing and to not care what anybody thought about me. When I was young, I was so present in myself and I just did everything that I wanted to do because it made me feel really good. And it made others around me really proud that I was going out there and trying something and doing the things that I loved. But as you get older, these things get in the way of your life. And I mean, just in general, life gets in the way, having to be an adult and pay your bills and, go to work, and you don't have enough time to create and do the things that you want to do. And you have to start prioritizing that time to be able to do those things. But then you also have like the judgment of everybody. And also, like, growing up, I didn't have social media the way that we have it now. Like, I can't imagine the young girls, young boys out there now who are trying to like create and do their thing. Like, all the young people out there now have so much more pressure on them when they put something out there because of social media. And that's not something that I had, but it's also hard because it's like, I wonder what it would have been like if I did have something like that growing up. Like, if I had access to be able to post a video of me singing or doing different things or starting a YouTube channel because we had better internet access. So it's like we live in a time where it's so much easier for young people to put their creations out there, but there's such a larger platform of judgment. And it goes right back to don't letting other people affect you, whether it's your ex-husband or your husband at the time or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your mom or your dad or your siblings. Do not let anybody else affect what you want to create. And I get that there are different levels of difficulty for everybody in that. I fell somewhere in the lower difficult end. Did I have it as hard as some people? Absolutely not. But was there a huge, huge gap of people above me who had a way easier life? Of course. So it's just like, finding sometimes the most successful people that I've seen in life, and not nepotism successful, like you being handed everything and being given a career because your mommy and daddy were successful. That's not the type of success that I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who literally came from nothing. You lived in a trailer park. You grew up out in the country. You were broke in the city and you just had your mom and your multiple siblings. Like, that's what it was like for me. We grew up with nothing. We did not have money to take care of things. And I think that that is something that still affects me till this day, is the fact that, like, one of my biggest problems in life is money. And I think that's a lot of people's the difficulty that we have is money. If I had money and I didn't have to constantly work about going to work to make money so I could pay my bills, to have the place that I want to live and eat the things that I want to eat, dress the way I dress, have the skincare products, all those things that I have to work really, really hard for. If I didn't have that difficulty, I would be creating so much more, and I might be a little bit further ahead in my creations because I would have more time to invest in that. So I think it's like, for the people who really put themselves out there when it's not easy, don't give up. I'm not going to give up, and you shouldn't give up. And if you are lucky enough to be able to have more financial stability that's going to help you, then use that. Take that and use it as a weapon in your back pocket where you're able to really just go out there and do more. And so it's just, let me just look at my notes really quick because, I've touched base on so many different topics already. And this is more of an introduction just to sort of get your guys' toes wet on all the things that I will be talking about in future podcasts. Like I said, I'm going to be talking about trauma, relationships, love, and abuse. mental health and learning how to love myself again. Um, I mentioned that I'm writing a memoir, started writing it back in 2022. The memoir is called Resilient. Um, and I still have so much more to write. It's been quite an interesting journey trying to write a book for somebody who doesn't even read books that often. Like, I really don't read books that often. I think the last time that I sat down and like actually read a book was when I was in college, and it was like you need to read this book. And I try to pick up books every once in a while and read little inserts and different things, maybe parts of it that I know are going to be inspiring. But I know I'm bad. I'm bad at reading. I get bored easily. And it's not that what I'm reading in the book is necessarily boring. It's that the words on the page, sometimes when I read them, I feel like I run off the page and then I get lost and I try to come back to the page. Then I have to read the page over. And I know so many people who have this difficulty. So it's just like writing a book has been a very difficult journey, and for me, it's not even like literary, or I don't even know if that's the right word to necessarily use, but it's not even about like the words that I'm like writing, like having a difficulty putting words together. It's more of the words that I'm putting together are very almost traumatic for me to relive. And sometimes I find it really, really, really hard to write and being able to emotionally balance my feelings. Like, I've had to go through these phases of where I'm like, okay, I could write like a whole chapter. Like, one day I literally wrote out 3 chapters and I was like, oh my God, all of that just like poured straight out of me. And then I got to this other chapter where I started writing some deep stuff and I was like, I have to stop. Like, mentally, I cannot continue to write. It's draining me. It's feeling very, very overwhelming, and I feel very triggered right now. So I had to stop. So, yeah, as I was saying, it's kind of been like really mentally challenging to write a book because I'm digging deep into like traumas and my childhood and all these different things that when I'm writing about them, I'm like, oh my God, like, wow, I realized that I'm writing about this thing, but I didn't realize that this thing affected me so deeply. Um, and I think it's been really healing, but also really triggering at times where I'm like, oh wow, I really have to take a break. Like, I can't write this. Like, I haven't really written anything for probably like a month now. Because I like did a deep dive and like wrote like 10,000 words. Like, I just like 10,000 words just came out of me within the course of like a couple of days or like a week or whatever. And and then I was like, I can't write anymore. Like, I'm kind of like out of this writer's block where like just mentally I can't pour myself out anymore because it's exhausting. Um, and I felt like I really needed to take time to like think about the things that I wrote. And that's part of the reason that I even started this podcast was as like a way to help me sort of process some of these feelings and these different things that I've been going through in life and experienced, and figure out a way to how am I going to now transition some of these thoughts back into a topic that I want to write in my book and focus on. I mean, I know I've mentioned this already, but we're just going to reiterate it and saying like, this journey of me writing the book and even doing this podcast, they're really tools to help me heal from the traumas that I've gone through in my life and that other people have caused, or whether it's like the trauma of my parents getting divorced to the trauma of my marriage falling apart. So it's just like, it's trying to find that inner child in me again who was brave and fearless, and being like, how can I bring her back and make myself, if I was to take my younger version by the hand and be like, hey, are you proud of who I am right now? And then like almost like show a movie, a montage of my life. Would she be happy? Would she be proud of the things that I've done? Would she be proud of who I am now? And I think that that's something that like I've done a lot of things in my life that I regret, and I think all of us do. You know, I try to say that I live my life with no regrets. I think a lot of people try to say that, but guess what? there's a lot of things that I regret in my life. Do I regret them to a point where I'm like, oh my God, I absolutely need to figure out how to go back in time so I can change that thing? No, I learned from it. Do I regret it a little bit? Yes. Well, yes, I regret it because I regret the fact that I traumatized or hurt myself in an unnecessary way, or that I put myself in a situation for somebody else to take advantage of me and manipulate me and traumatize me in a way that I didn't even know could happen. Um, but I also try to not let my regrets control me. Like, yes, do I kind of regret it? Sure. But do I also feel like taking that as a learning experience and figuring out how I can do better next time, and how that situation, try to take everything from it to be like, okay, well, what lesson did this teach me? Do I know now to not do this thing again, etc.? So it's like, go out there and live your life and do what you got to do. Don't don't go out of your way to hurt other people. And if other people hurt you, leave them be. Move past that. Don't focus on how other people hurt you and how you should try to fix them. Move past it. That sucks that they hurt you. But like, move past it in a way that you can. I mean, in certain situations, like something that I'm currently going through, there's only so much that I can let go of a situation until it's dealt with. Um, and I think that like every situation has a certain, like, it's kind of hard for me to specify exactly right now what I mean. Um, but pretty much just like, if somebody called you a mean name, like I had somebody reach out to me today and make a rude comment. And you know what you do? When someone does that, block them, get rid of them. Have a zero tolerance policy in your life, you know, and find out ways to navigate people in situations that make you uncomfortable or put you in a place where you don't feel safe. Um, Hopefully all that's making sense. I feel like I kind of touched base on everything that I really wanted to talk about today, and I really hope that um, I can start gaining an audience of people who understand what I'm talking about, or maybe people who have experienced trauma, whether it was, emotional, physical, sexual abuse. I really want to be able to create a safe space for you guys. I want to be able to touch on topics and try to help you guys find some insight into your own lives, as well as me trying to find insight into my own. So, if anybody ever has any questions, always feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram channel, bear.all podcast. Let me pull up everything so I can get you guys the. So you guys can follow me on my Instagram, which is bear.all.podcast. Bear is spelled Bare. And I will be releasing a new episode every week on Spotify. I will also have my videos fully posted up on YouTube, and clips and highlights posted on my Instagram. I hope that I can continue to create this and maybe even come out with little specials here and there once in a while. And I just want to wish you guys all the best day possible. I hope that you guys do the things that make you feel inspired and you go out and find your happiness. And I hope that you guys are making your inner child feel proud. Thank you guys so much for joining me on today's podcast. Again, I'm Bethany Autumn, your host, and this is the Bear All Podcast. Bye.